All right, so welcome to our pre-ultimate lecture on programming languages. And today we will talk about basically, we'll give you a big overview of what's involved in full stack web development. Again, of course, we'll review what's front end and what's back end. And there are many things involved in modern web development, many technologies, many approaches involved. We'll go back to some simpler times. We'll start with a little history lesson. And again, maybe we'll start also, since again, of course, some of you already are working with web technologies, right? For those who are really anxious for the assignment, I'll give you the assignment as well immediately. Right, so, without further ado, right, we start here, right? And I have it's homework 7, so it'll be the last one. Right, Go is 6. On Kotlin, which I know a bunch of you are doing right now, right? Some of you are submitting Kotlin right now. Yeah, maybe. I saw 3 submissions, so there's like 9 more to go, right? Today. So, so for the deadline, right? So it's basically the same type of application. So you can keep using Kotlin, for example, if you want. You can use Go, of course. For the back end, right? We'll talk again what's back end, what's front end, of course, right? So, you will need to provide some simple user interface, right? For those who really feel like designers, who feel like unicorns, who can do design and coding themselves, you're welcome to knock yourselves out, all right? So, the basic idea is so anything that can create, view, update, and delete. So here it's a task. But you can come up with something else, maybe something more interesting, maybe, right? If you don't want to do this create read, update tasks, could be a shop, could be some sort of game. But again, what I want for the full 100%, I want the persistence, I want the database support, right? So also some extra features, right? Again, same type of features, maybe some statistics, maybe some search, maybe a download option. It's easy to add. Some things are really easy to add, actually, right? And again, some nice UI will count, right? Some of these will count, right? Of course, user accounts, if you implement that would be great. But again, not completely required. And again, of course, the only thing I really do want, if you have, I'm sure you'll find something existing. There's lots of them, projects, again. It's basically a question of what to choose, right? Don't submit something you did not write yourself completely, right? So if you modify something existing or have some sort of template, that's fine. But again, I want the comments. I want your train of thought, how you put everything together, right? And so submit your zip project as usual, or additionally, of course, I would love to see a public Git repository, right? That would be great. So these are just some suggestions. You could do a vanilla JS with Flask. Again, since you already did Flask last year, right? A little bit of Flask. Yes. So that was the basic one. But maybe try to push yourself, right? Maybe do React and do the backend in Node, right? That's again, it's not a strict choice. Just some suggestions, right? You can do it in Kotlin, of course, backend, right? You can do really nice framework is Laravel. But then you have to write PHP. That's the only downside, right? And again, database, you can interchange most of these. Theoretically, if you want, you can do persistence in MongoDB or something like that. It's possible, right? Those are the NoSQL databases. Maybe I'll mention this again. Maybe I'll update this. You can also use... you can also use NoSQL database such as MongoDB for persistence. So yeah, so that's a note. Let's see. Right, so now the only question is, of course, when is it due, right? So for now, I'm thinking 20th of April. That will work. So for show and tell, right, when you bring me the works would be, I'm thinking 21st or 24th, right? Because things will also be show and tell for the AI course, right? So 21st, perhaps? That works for everyone here present? Or yes? 21st. Okay, so we'll stick with the 21st. That's Monday. Yes? Maybe Easter, yes, there's Easter. So what? Yeah, let's check out when the Easter is actually. Good. Yeah, no, oh. Easter weekend. Well, but it's Sunday. Yeah, so 20th is Easter. So after Easter, it's after Easter. Is it the official state holiday? Yes. Yeah, Latvian one. Brīvdienu calendars, or brīvdienas. Let's double check. I should probably also see. All right. I had to put a bunch of cookies. Right, let's see. So what's April? Right, 21st is indeed a holiday. That kind of complicates things a little bit. Well, you have, of course, you may have more time to work because 24th for the AA course. So I guess you could go, you can show on 24th, you can show both, I guess. That's what, yeah. So let's do that, yeah. So 24th will be the show. So that means that also project management show exam. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to actually, yeah, right. So assuming you wrote good comments and you can explain. And so I guess I'll push it. So 21st of, I'll put the deadline to 21st, evening of 21st then, I guess. That's also still plenty of time. All right. So hope I'll be pleasantly surprised by what you bring. More optionally. All right. Right, and if somebody really has other things to do, of course, there's not really a requirement. I'm leaving in the option to also submit the Rust if somebody wants to explore Rust. But it's not complete. It's not gonna, it's not needed because we're not going to be talking about Rust, right? But it's possible to submit on Rust something, right? But it's much more complicated, right? To get really good at Rust, you need, I would say, more than a couple of weeks, right? So, okay. So now let's do a little notebook. Riga, where is Belunda? It's like Sweden or something. Okay. So, yeah, so we'll go back to our topic. So this is, again, if you can see the picture, right, I was going to say a quiz, pop quiz, but this is not really a quiz, right? This is indeed the first web server, right? Now, my company made this. Do you know what's hardware of this? Do you know? Nope. Next. Do you know anyone knows anything about Next? Yes. Yes, after he was fired by the guy he hired, basically. Yes, that happens. A stab, a backstab, right? But yeah, so he went out actually. But that's interesting. Those who are using Macs, I see some Mac users, right? I see some Mac users, right? A lot of the core technology that was built for Next in the early 90s, all this OOP stuff, all the nice desktop stuff, basically transferred to Apple in late 90s because when they brought Steve Jobs back, he said, okay, you don't get just me, you get you have to bring all this stuff you did for Next, basically. All the UI stuff, all the desktop stuff, right? It's based, I think it's based on BSD actually, right? So basically the Mac OS you're using is actually sort of has a very heavy parentage in this Next. So again, so this nice little box, right? That cost, I don't know, like 10,000. They were really nice boxes for that time, but they were very expensive, right? Like most things, right? Steve Jobs made. They were, I used some of these actually, but I think it was Stanford. They had these, but they, of course, very close to him. But yeah, so this is from CERN, right? This machine is used. Do not power down, right? It's a server, right? Property of CERN. So what's CERN? Yeah, the thing. Yeah, the collider. So yeah. So the story, of course, goes that this was, of course, invented by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, right? I think he was also closing the Olympics in 2012, right? I mean, pretty famous, probably one of the more famous British persons. One of the more influential ones, at least, right? So, but let me make a notebook for this so we can, actually remember this next time, right? So. I'll do it here, right? I'll touch code space. All right. Notebooks, yeah. Modern development. Where is it? I have to restart again. Looks like something has to be restarted. Oh, I guess I'll restart Copilot. So, Tim Berners-Lee, let me see if I can pull a picture of him. Tim Berners-Lee, what was he doing? He was working at CERN, right? He's still alive. He's only 70 years old, pretty young. So, he's working as a scientist, basically, a physician. I think he was a physician, if I remember correctly. If I remember right. So, yeah, of course, his parents were mathematicians and computer scientists, actually. His mom was a computer scientist, apparently, right? So, and he worked, well, yeah, it's not fair. He worked on one of the early his parents worked on first early commercially built computer, right? So he, of course, had good advantages, right? So, yeah, so, maybe built his own computer in like late 70s, right? And so on and so on and so on, right? So his, of course, big idea was, in general for scientists, the idea was of sharing research, right? How do you share research? And, well, web development. Let's do history. So let's do history. Let me see. Let me make AI do some work for us. Well, right? I'm lazy. Web development. So birth of. Web. Yes. So 91, I believe, right? So, but let's take a look at the first website, right? It's still, it used to be still around. First website ever, right? First website, CERN, right? Info CERN. Let's see if it's still around. I think they made the archive version, right? It should be well. No, I don't want that. That's our new web development. We don't want that. But this is the first website. It's browse the first website. It looked like this basically, right? So, all right, you've probably seen this, right? So, basically. So what kind of technologies so what did he propose? He proposed HTML, right? HTML stands for what? For hypertext markup, what? Language, right? So, and again, of course, I usually ask, okay, what is this programming language? Well, it is not, right? Because, yeah, there was the guy they just released from jail in America, Nikola, the guy who had that scam, right? You heard about it, right? He was famous for saying how HTML everywhere, and the people saw he was full of stuff, right? Because he didn't know what he was talking about, right? Like HTML is not really a programming language, right? You don't control AI in your car with it, right? So yeah, but it is, of course, it's a markup language. So it's a way of structuring text, right? So let me add this first web page ever. Right. So what happens afterwards, right? So he proposed this protocol, again, as scientists are want to do, right? They just say, okay, here's this cool thing, right? So Mosaic, right? I remember actually when Mosaic was launched, I had a friend at UCLA. He showed me this, and I thought, okay, why do I need this? I have my nice text-based interface, right? Why do I need this, right? So Mosaic was a game changer, right? Because we had support for images, right? You could see images, and that's kind of basically changed everything. Well, sort of like then you could see so basically that's when it basically became something that people who don't really speak command line, right? Who don't do command line, they sort of could use it, right? It is relatively user friendly. Of course, the question was what could you serve it, right? At the same time, of course, you needed servers, right, to provide this information. So servers, of course, this protocol is, well, it still is around, HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Do we use it? Well, what do we use now these days mostly? S, right, secure, right, right. So, but basically same thing. Of course, the advantage, of course, of this plain one, right? So, right, right. So that's short history, right? So the early pages basically were they were static, right? Yeah, and we have dynamic content, right? So the early pages, what is the process? You ask a request, like I go to some web page, like I go to this, let's say I go to this page, right? And of course I go to a hot link, of course here, right? I'll do a hot link. But basically, you get something back, you get some resource back, right? Fixed, right? There's no dynamism at all, right? It's just something comes back, right? Let me see this. First web server, right? Let's see if this works. Yeah, right. So, let me show you here. So basically, early standards. Let me see the early standards. So early standards, early web standards, right? So what do we have? We actually had history, right? Yeah, we got our consortium. Actually, it's still around. Of course, one of the big ones. We didn't have real standard. I mean, what Tim Berners proposed, right? You know, but there are also standards proposed by just a browser maker, right? So in fact, I think image tag, right, which we are using, like I'm using right now, was proposed by, I think, Mark Anderson, who's making Mosaic, right? It was not, it was just, okay, yeah, it'd be cool to have, you know, it'd be cool to have a blink tag and so on, right? Yeah, so early dynamism, right? So early web standards, right? Yeah. No, well, so okay. Now let's see. When was it founded, right? W3C founding, was it 94 actually, right? At MIT, right? With CERN, right? So you needed this basically, right? Yeah, 94, not 96. We see hallucinations. 1994. W3C is founded. Yeah. Yeah. So CSS, let's take a look at CSS. So CSS, cascading style sheets, right? You done any CSS work? Some of you have been forced to? You have some, right? So the core idea, of course, behind CSS is to do what? Styling. What else can you do with it? Yes, transitions, fonts, size, movement, right? Layout, right? So, but originally, of course, so what the big idea is, you have a structure from HTML, and CSS actually provides styling, right? So let's see the history, the timelines. There's an HTML standard timeline. Boston University looks okay. Let's do HTML standard. We'll stack Wikipedia. Right, we are now on Wikipedia. We are on. Well, there was nice timeline somewhere. I guess it's not here. Right, and there were some things happening, of course. Right, so we have this language for markup, right? HTML. Would like to see some images here. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. But I want something relatively official. None of these are really official. Like you can sort of, you know, so either you have a dry reading, right, or you have this sort of non-authoritative. This might be actually. This is actually gives you pretty good overview. This looks like pretty good actually. Yeah. We have JavaScript here as well. Not really, but this looks pretty good. Yeah, but I don't know if this is this guy in Spain, right? Yeah. Right, so this picture, right, early standards, let's do this here. Yeah, this looks pretty good, decent. I will just basically hot link it. No, I could probably download it since I'm lazy. Right, early web standards. All right, let's see if we can, oh yeah, I can hot link. All right, great. Yeah, So I'm permitting, I wouldn't say a crime, but something you should, like I said, you should be very careful with hot linking, of course, because if somebody says they are not, the request comes for the page, comes from, for the picture comes from somewhere which is not authorized, they can say, okay, I'll give you some, I don't know, some dirty picture or something, right? So it's one of the older tricks in the book, which early web servers used to, if they were being hit by, people hot linking the images, servers were slow in those days, and serving, 1,000 pictures a second was basically, a kiss of death, right? So, you try to make some precautions for that. Okay, but, right, so we can see here, so actually 90 CERN, right, HTML tags, draft, and 94 is actually HTML3, 2 working group, right? So we were stuck with HTML4 for about basically all the 2000s, up to HTML5, so we're in HTML5. It looks like we're not going to be on HTML6 anytime soon. So this is really good news for you guys, because it's very standardized. Now, not much else is happening. Well, there's one kind of, I would say, not evil player, but I would say evil player. We had the evil Explorer. The big issue was that browser makers come up with some standards, right, which are not standards. It's their own idea, right? And if the committee does not accept it, it's not a real standard, right? So we had this problem. Well, originally Navigator had some, well, it tried to play by the rules, but Explorer introduced all kinds of their own little nitty things, kind of cool things, maybe some useful things, but they were not standardized, right? So what do we have now these days? We had this sort of like, I would say, golden age in early 2000s, when all the browsers sort of played around, played along, everything was standardized. What's happening these days? Which browser is the leading one? Yes, Chrome's. Yeah, Chromium based is Chrome, anything Chromium based, of course, or Chrome. So what's happening is, it's a de facto monopoly, and standards are being sort of pushed around a little bit. So Google decides, okay, we want something new, right? Usually something involved with ad tracking or ads in general, right, or ad blocking, and they sort of push it to us. And even if the standard committee says, no, this is not really a good idea, right? Because of course, who sits on committees? Well, of course, the representatives from Google, from Firefox, from Safari, right, some web teams, and of course, they sometimes go, there's not much of a consumer perspective there actually. But even then, even if there is a perspective, even if they say, okay, we don't want this kind of new technology, we don't want this particular tag, it's kind of evil, well, Google can just implement anyways, right? And if you're a web developer, you most likely have to support it, right? Because if 80% of the web is using Chrome-based browsers, you have to support it, and that's unfortunate. Okay, so, all right. So let me see if we can continue. Right, so CSS on 95, of course, we'll have, well, right, but we also, I mentioned, so JavaScript, right, so the third cornerstone, right? So the third cornerstone of our, right, so, yeah, 95, HTML4, on, yeah, so we had some interesting things happening, actually. For a while, there was some fight, XHTML, something people were trying to do XHTML, right, yeah. Right, okay, so this looks pretty good. I don't know if there's HTML 5.2. I don't really want to check that, right? So check W3C. Yeah, so let's see, does it exist? Yeah, living standard. So it's a living standard. So what this is what's happening currently is that for each of the technologies, HTML, right? For example, in this case, it's a living standard, meaning it's continuously updated. So what's happening again? You can also submit it. You say, okay, I want some cool tag, right? You can submit it. Maybe, they say, okay, yeah, this is amazing, and the whole world wants it, and all the web browser will implement it, but most likely not, right? So that's where. So we are at HTML5, right? We have CSS, right, for styling, for transitions, and we have our third cornerstone, of course, is our friend JavaScript, right? So I think I've told you this story before. Where is our story? Where's my story? not Easter weekend, but we were here. Where is, oh, there we go, no, here, oh yeah, no, that's the first website ever, but where's the web server, that's all good, but where's my server? Oh, there's standard, oh, there we go, yeah, right. So early web standards, so JavaScript. So, who introduced JavaScript? Well, the first first really popular web browser, which is Navigator, right? By Natsuki. So the question is JavaScript. So what's the idea of JavaScript? Who can tell me, as far as originally for the web, what was the idea? What do you do with JavaScript on a web, not on a server, on your screen? Any idea? Yeah. So basically, you basically have full control through this so-called DOM API of what? Of the browser. So you can modify all the HTML, you can modify all CSS, and you can of course respond to user events. And of course, you can also respond to some external events these days, right? Meaning something called through WebSockets, through a web, right? Some connections, or you can get the data source from other sites, basically, right? So of course the question is JavaScript related to Java? No, yeah. So why is it called JavaScript? No idea?
I think I
Here
have
it is.
heard it, but I don't.
Yeah, marketing, of course, because the story is naming, right? Naming of JavaScript. Side note. This will be a side note. So basically, yeah, Mocha then changed LiveScript JavaScript to popularity of Java, because Java had just come out from Sun Microsystems, right? It's okay. We have this script. So Java is on a server. Java is going to do all the server stuff, right? Java was looking to be the server side. Well, JavaScript will be the client side, but of course, right? Again, but besides some syntactic, the language are quite different in terms of design and purpose, right? So that's the story, and of course also about JavaScript, right? Another thing is how long it takes to write JavaScript. I think I've heard this. You might have heard this story. No, anyone? Like this was created by Brandon Reich, right? And how long did he take to write the original version of JavaScript? Yeah, like 10 days. So that shows. Unfortunately, that shows at times, right? So he was pretty good programmer, pretty good designer as far as language designer, architect. But still, there's lots of you call warts, right? Or called not bugs, but gotchas, right? So lots of things which make, compared to other language, make sometimes make you pull your hairs out sometimes, right? So unfortunately, the bad news is that JavaScript is basically forever, right? It's built into browsers, right? It's a standard interpreter. So you don't really have a choice. Well, you have some choice these days, right? You have something called WASM, right? We'll talk about that as well in a moment. But JavaScript is basically the dominant, basically what runs all this, what I'm doing right now actually is because I can do this, I can run this sort of like virtual machine, right? I can have my own development because, of course, thanks to JavaScript, of course, right?
When JavaScript was created, were there any lawsuits from Java, about the naming, or did
No, well, they had some sort of marketing because, of course, Sun it is not owned by Oracle, right? At the time, Java was owned by Sun Microsystems, but it is open source, right? So they must have made some agreement, right? And JavaScript was made by Navigator, and I guess they made agreement. But now, of course, it's kind of funny. Java is owned by Oracle, and JavaScript is owned by Oracle. And they don't even want to give you the name. They don't want to open source JavaScript, actually, which is kind of silly. Because official name for JavaScript is ECMAScript, right? Kind of silly name. Right, so, right, now, so early standards, like later web standards. Right. Right. So this is for HTML. Let's do CSS. Right, CSS. When was it? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So CSS2, CSS3. We are on CSS3. Right. We have modules now. Layout. This is hallucinations. Flex came out earlier. Flex was much earlier. This is what happens when you have AI models you can't trust. You have to trust yourself. Let's take a look what the picture looks like. And, no, there's no picture like that, right? So we can look at the picture here maybe. We can see it here. No, this is HTML timeline. So let's do a CSS timeline. Yep. Well, we don't really see a good one. Yeah. We have to make one ourselves, looks like, right? So CSS Flex introduced. No, we want Wikipedia. Wikipedia. No, we want the non images. This is all good. We want Wikipedia, of course. Let's see, of course, MDN. Right. So we're going to do web development. Of course, you will want to bookmark this site, right? MDN. This is like your basically your, I would say, Bible, right? Your Wikipedia, well, your reference, basically your major reference, right? But I want to see specifications. When was it released, actually? Module 1. Yeah, let's see. Flexbox, you can see when was it made, right? You can see people who are involved with this. Like you see who actually makes standard, by the way. You can see this here, right? So there's David Hyatt from Netscape, Ian Hickson from Opera, you know that's the browser. Mozilla, Microsoft, right? And there's also Google, Apple, Microsoft. So those are the guys who make standards, basically, right? And somebody want to see the, 2009 actually. So Flexbox actually was early working draft. So let's take a look. Still working draft. We want to see when it was introduced. Yep, working draft till 212. Candidate recommendation, that's good. Now 14, actually it is 14 I guess. Last call, working draft. And finally it should be yes. So this is actually the introduction 2014. Technically CSS was, you know, Flexbox final draft, first final draft. So yeah, and we can have, of course, grid. Yeah, so grid, of course, is awesome as well. Yeah, so something's changed, right? Okay, let's take a break. So we have our HTML, we have our CSS. Let's go more in the after break. We'll go into finish our JavaScript, discussion on JavaScript, and talk about backend languages.